This is the Leadership in Insurance podcast, brought to you by FinPro Search Partners.
Insurance companies are businesses and they need to look for the long term and be sustainable.
We went from 0 to 1 and now it's going from 1 to 100.
Insurance as a concept, as a kind of service, is brilliant. The execution is what we're looking at now. I think the companies that are going to succeed are the ones that are going to understand and master the art of intent. When we talk about innovation, we lean too heavily to think about technology and we don't think about creating a culture of innovation.
I think innovation is essentially continuous improvement of existing processes and platforms and product.
Right? It's got to be easy. It's got to be seamless.
Good morning and welcome to the Leadership in Insurance podcast. I'm your host, Alex Bond, and I'm very lucky today to be joined by Caroline, who is CUO at Cowbell. Caroline, well, it's good. I'm saying good morning. It's the afternoon here. Is it morning for you still? Are we? Is
It's
that?
morning in New York. Yes.
Yes, it is still. I'm in London today, which is confusing everyone because I was in New York. Now I'm in London. I'm coming back to New York very shortly. But otherwise, we could have done this in person. That would have been much nicer.
That
But
would have been cool. Yeah.
yeah, sadly, I'm in what's, if you could see behind me, I'm in some basically cupboard in my house. It's not very glamorous either, but it's the recording setup. But Caroline, before I witter on about my cupboard setup, be really lovely to for you to introduce yourself and is customary on the podcast, introduce the Cowbell business.
Sure. So I'm Caroline Thompson. I'm the Chief Underwriting Officer at Cowbell. I run the underwriting team and the reinsurance part of it. We are a insurance provider. Our main insurance product is cyber. We also offer tech E&O, errors and omissions, and we're differentiated in our approach to cyber insurance specifically through the strength of our technology that we use. So we aggregate, analyze risk for each individual business before they even become a client. And we collect inside out and outside in source data of 46 million businesses across the US and the UK. And that data that we collect encompasses about 1,000 data points for each business. We use it to refine and build out our risk pool. And then we have our Cowbell factors. I think it's important to mention about Cowbell. That's our risk rating tool. And we use that to compare each risk against its peers where its cybersecurity lies. So it's been a great journey. I've been there 5 years almost. And it's exciting to see the company grow. And I'm excited to see what kind of products we can offer in the future and how we'll continue to leverage our technology to build better underwriting.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Well, let's talk about products, actually. I was going to ask this later, but we just mentioned products. You've just launched Tech E&O. What kind of new product developments do you see on the horizon as we move forward in the next couple of years?
I can't talk that much about next products, but you typically, you're thinking about what does your broker want to sell to their client, right?
Sure.
So you kind of focus on that. And we have been asking our broker partners to help us find out what is most important to them. And that really is those management liability lines or maybe other niche products that they want to sell and they haven't been able to sell enough of. So just to give a little bit of a, kind of how we look at it and how we look to strategize around that. But specifically, the Tech E&O has been so exciting because my team, I would say over 50% of my team already had that Tech E&O underwriting experience. They hadn't been doing it for a couple of years. And so it was exciting to kind of launch that within the team and see them put those skills back into place again. And with that launch, we ended up launching our Cowbell Copilot tool. And so that was so fascinating. We are able, when you're underwriting Tech E&O, you're oftentimes collecting a sample contract because you want to make sure the wording is strong in favor of the client you're about to insure. And our Copilot tool can scan contracts and really give a quick assessment to an underwriter on where the language lies, if there's places in which it needs to be stronger or what specifically we're looking for. And so the underwriter is able to assess the risk a lot more quickly and get terms out the door. So it's been an amazing experience. I still think, we all know that AI needs to learn based on like
Mm-hmm.
how we think through things, how we think through the underwriting process. So there's a lot more to do there around, making sure that that model is learning from us and how we think through things as well.
Mm. Yeah, learning on the right data sets and getting the right feedback loops seems to be the big challenge really for AI.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna get onto AI in a bit because
Okay.
we were just joking before we hit record. He's like, can't do a podcast in 2024 not talk about AI. It's not allowed. Um, uh, that's a piece of tech that you've just launched, but obviously you've been at Cowbell since 2019. Looking at the growth of Cowbell as well as kind of underwriting innovation. Copilot's an example of how you can leverage tech.
Mhm.
What have been the other kind of significant use cases that you've seen in your time at Cowbell, integrating that tech into kind of part of your process?
Yeah, and I think it's good to like back up a little. My
Mm,
experience, has been traditional insurance carrier experience
yeah.
prior to this. And I've said it in a lot of panels and interviews, but I wanted to do it differently, right? And I think traditional insurance companies have come far since then. You've seen a lot of like either acquisition or they're buying and relying a lot upon providers of these types of tools. But back when I was looking for something like Cowbell, it wasn't there yet. And so it was exciting to hear the co-founders talk about a platform and how we were going to leverage tech on every part of the business.
Hmm.
And that's what excited me the most. And we do. So we leverage tech on every facet of the business. We built out varying levels specifically around the underwriting process. And so in the very beginning, right, we knew we would have several capacity providers and we needed to be able to distribute that capacity in a way where we're writing the code and it can keep up with what we're trying to achieve. And so
Hmm.
that just some of those simplistic stuff, but you have to think through was part of the technology from the beginning. And then, I touched on the data pool. That's very, very important. But then there's other things like Moo GPT. And ever since we first launched with a product that was fully automated, and then really I had come on to build that product that was going to be more comprehensive. And it is our mothership, I would say, of like products where some would be automated underwriting and some would have to be referred to an underwriter. And in
Hmm.
that case, we had developed a Moo GPT that was an AI assistant helping underwriters kind of highlight things that they needed to look at, including referral reasons, like why did this get referred into your queue?
Hmm.
What items do you need to highlight when you're going through this risk? And so that really has been a part of like the beginnings of the underwriting process. Then we have things like that we have Gen AI that's assisting with all of the vulnerabilities and exploits of our potential customers or our renewal accounts. We also have LLMs that are simplifying insights and recommendations to our customers. So there's a lot of different ways. I think
Hmm.
like if you summarize it a little, in my opinion, I think the most important use cases that have like turned out to give us the most I don't know, bang for your buck, but then I'll on both like the growth side, but then also the loss ratio side, because I think you need both, right? Um,
Hmm.
need to be able to be hitting your premium goals, but then also keeping your loss ratio low.
Yeah.
It's around speed and efficiency. And then like on the flip side is the identification and presentation of the most critical attributes of risk. And so that secondary thing, the attributes of risk, really helps those underwriters identify quickly what they want to underwrite, what they want to decline, what they want to offer terms on, but with subjectivities or
Mm.
extra like limitations on coverage, things like that. So I think that's been what we've centered our thought process around: speed, efficiency, because that's like, how do we get to our broker a quotation quickly, right?
Mhm.
And then the secondary thing really helps drive my goals of loss ratio, keeping that loss ratio down.
Yeah, 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 and that I think that's reflective of the tech change we've seen in sort of the tech era, if I might use that phrase. Although I'm less and less like in love with the idea of the term insurtech, but we all know what this means when we work in that world. Is that it was very much kind of using technology to drive more efficient distribution, but may I be as bold as to say some of the early adoption of that didn't spend enough time putting the tech in to underwrite well.
Yes.
And but that seems to be catching up now. You and I had a conversation before this call. It was about bringing on new talent and the challenges of that. And I think the sort of naysayers and the negativity around tech and underwriting and the modern balance of that um, is it impacts the ability for underwriters to develop underwriting skills if there's a lot of tech to. What do you think about that? Because obviously you are leveraging all this technology. How does it impact your ability to train, new entrants to the industry, new and less experienced underwriters? How does it impact their development?
I think it's an interesting topic, and we've
Mm,
discussed it before. I think it's definitely something you have to keep. I probably don't think enough about, and I think I want to think about more. So I like talking about it, but it's I think we need to make sure when we're hiring new people, they have to have that openness and proficiency in technology, right?
mm,
Openness to learn new things. And so these modern underwriters that will be coming into the industry have to be like understanding how to leverage advanced technologies and kind of playing with that AI, right? Themselves. And then I think they still have to have that like core enhanced analytical skills. Like we have to
mm,
have that, often. But I think secondarily is like the fact that things change so often. And so they have to be adaptable to certain situations and new things that are coming. And then specifically in cyber insurance, if you think about it, like we have the threat landscape that changes all the time. I mean, even if we switch it to property, NatCat is like, I mean, we've got crazy events in weather happening across the world. And so we have to think about those things, and things change there too. It's not just cyber.
mm, mm.
And so I think in terms of your last part of your question, which was around, it was like what it was, oh man, I like lost the train of thought, but like it was around I think the what do you look for in hiring? I think that's
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
what you
yeah,
look, yeah, what you look for in hiring. I think it's definitely those people who are adaptable, proficient in technology, and like have that enhanced analytical skills.
yeah. I, I was thinking as you were talking about this, and I was thinking about the modern kind of learning. There's a lot of studies ago now that people have changed the way they remember things. Like, so they've changed the way they remember. So we might have previously learned everything we need to know about underwriting and cyber, and it'd just be stuck in our head. And now people don't do that because if they need to find information, they Google it or they're much more kind of comfortable with that. And I say it in a way like people are coming into work now where that's all they've ever done. Like if you're a early 20s grad, coming out of college, you've probably got closer to that skill set than. Does that make any sense? Or
Oh
am
yeah,
I
like
just,
you've kind of already, I mean, yeah, they're all on TikTok, right? And they're doing things, they're probably like learning some of this like AI stuff from TikTok and stuff. So yeah, I
yeah.
think they're kind of like they've already got they're ahead of the game. And you see that even in the cyber insurance industry. Like you see super young folks with pretty senior jobs already, like
Mm-hmm.
and that's cool. I think it's interesting. I think it's something we should continue to watch. Have they maybe they haven't learned the skills or done it enough.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think if we talk about just like additionally what I'm looking for in an underwriter, those were kind of like the basics. You still need to have those skills where you're able to talk and communicate externally, right? You're able to keep your desk clean and kind of get things done in a certain day. So there's those kind of skills. And I don't know if they're necessarily taught by, like just education and stuff. I think that's a little deeper sometimes. I don't know.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, we always think. I always think about this when I went off to college. I was hopeless at managing my own time. I was like hopeless at getting things done on time. And then I was one of these people. I should have gone to work in a job that I hated, 9 to 5, for like a year, and then I would have. And everyone I knew that was like who did that was everyone got first class degrees because they were like, oh, I know how to work and I know how to deliver things to a time
Yeah,
scale. And there is those skill sets. Definitely. We've had that in our team. We've had some, new grads come in, and actually some of the stuff they struggle with is stuff that you would consider normal in a working
right.
context. But what they don't struggle with is, I mean, Sophie, my colleague who does a lot of things on the marketing side, will just find a new piece of technology that helps us and is just on top of it straight away.
Yeah.
And but it might be the nuts and bolts of business that they just don't get. So I think I'm always really cautious, and I'm also cautious about balance within a team because when we talk about talent, we always sometimes tend to gravitate towards new people coming into the industry, but obviously that's not where the talent lies. Where do you find there's a difference in working for a Cowbell versus, some of your previous employers, a Beasley or a Zurich? And how do you kind of look for that when you're interviewing people so they'll fit within the culture? So, well, I mean, if there is a difference, I'm assuming that there is. So, probably firstly,
Yeah.
part of the question is there a cultural difference? And two, how do you sort of check for that in the interview process?
Yeah, I think that really good questions because like you got to think about that all the time, especially like sometimes we'll even I'm sure you have the same you have young people come to you and help you like can you help me find a job, right? Like
Hmm. Hmm.
and there's like it's sometimes hard outside for those to get into those traditional firms outside of a trainee program, right?
Hmm.
And so that I think that was the really fun part for me about being
Hmm.
at a startup and being given the chance to build a team was that I was able to hire people whose experience was not cyber insurance underwriting, I was able to kind of scan a resume, see kind of like the core skills that they had from their job. We hired an accountant who is now one of our top like underwriters that gets the amount of number of quotes out the door, I would say. And he was in finance, before at another firm. And so like I think you just need in a startup, there are opportunities to be able to like just look outside the box a little bit. That said, once you kind of get to a point, I would like you definitely need the expertise in the room as well, especially because I couldn't at one point manage the team myself. I think I had 12 direct reports at one point, and it was just unmanageable. And so I had hired some senior underwriters that had 10 plus experience underwriting cyber, and it was easy. Once they became a cowbeller, they were able to then kind of take their own teams and lead. And so we have like an East and West Coast leadership team leading those underwriting teams. So that makes sense, and I think you need that balance. We also have like brokers, former brokers, former underwriters, accountants, and we even had some like personal lines experience people too. Because I think insurance is translatable, right? If you have those
Hmm.
core insurance skills and you know the terminology, I think that's it definitely. I'm so happy here because I was able to do stuff like that and give some people chances, and they've really taken it on themselves and really proven themselves throughout their career. So it's been great.
I'm pleased to hear you say that because something that I've always, I mean, look, I'm based in London a lot of the time, or my career was based in London, and Lloyd's everyone's very obsessed with being a lot of monoline specialist. And I'm quite resistant to that. Because I'm like, look, if you're a really good cyber underwriter, I reckon you'd make a pretty good property underwriter, a pretty good marine underwriter, and I'm not saying that you can do it in day one and say, right, I was really good at underwriting cyber, now I'm going to be brilliant at doing this. But I think we like to over egg how important that specialization is. And I think a little bit if it's that self-protection thing, like everyone wants their work to be worthy, right? And worth their time. And
I
some
agree
of
with
that,
you. Yeah.
some of that is going, oh, it's terribly difficult to understand, you know? I think I do it in my, I think I do it in mine. If someone asks me
I'm
what I do,
I'm
I
sure I
probably,
do the same. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I
I
definitely
give,
have in the past, but I think I agree with you in that respect.
mm,
I think we have, and maybe we're just more open-minded about it too. Like I think
mm,
maybe over time, or maybe it interests us more that like knowing about several lines rather than kind of staying on a specific topic. Like maybe that's where
mm,
we're built from. But I do,
mhm,
I agree with you. I think we gotta, it's funny you say that too, because so my dad is in the reinsurance world, and that's kind of how I found out about insurance. And
mhm,
he said that when I ended up taking I think my first job was like lawyers E&O claims, and then I ended up in
right.
cyber, and I was like, I just want to do cyber. And he's like, Caroline, I don't think you want to be so specific. And I've shifted in this career where I feel like it's translatable to a lot of other things because I built a team, I built processes. But I think it's so and so important. And so he was right. I think in the end, like I think it's fascinating how I believe that now. I'm totally in agreement with you there. I think like we're too focused. Like you've been a cyber under, you can't go do marine, I think we all can translate those same analytical skills to something else and learn a new topic. Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree.
I think the thing that drives me a bit mad about it is when we have like, let's say we've got an experienced person that's not in a role and they're looking proactively for a role that they won't be afforded the opportunity to try something new. Whereas if
Mm,
it was if it was a new grad or something like that, we would give them that opportunity. And your career is interesting. So like starting in claims, going into underwriting, like the amount of times that people go, oh, we couldn't take someone from claims. It's like someone's done 5 years cyber claims.
yeah.
I think they're probably a better shot at being an underwriter than like most people who've never touched cyber because they know the language, they know the wordings, they know the policy documentation. So yeah, it's really strange how little kind of mobility that we have there. What's been the biggest challenge, joining a sort of startup or scale up, joining Cowbell 2019, probably like, yeah, what's been the sort of biggest things that you've had to navigate? Like, because imagine there's just a lot of change and like dealing with change. I think that's what people mean when they go, "Oh, can someone work in a startup?" It's like, can you deal with change being a constant? But I might be wrong, so please tell me if I am.
No, you are correct, and we've talked about it before. Change is the biggest,
Mhm,
the big navigating change for my team more than me. I think I'm made of a certain mold, and I kind of thrive off of change. I thrive off of like a deviation or something new, kind of brought into a new tool that I can use. Right? I thrive off of that, but not everyone does. I think people like
mhm,
routine. I think people like consistency. And
mhm,
so navigating that within my team has proven challenging, but I've put kind of like a way together that it makes it better. But usually it's are centered around like, okay, we're using a new software within like within a process, or we even put a new process in place. A team member leaves, right? And then you kind of have to shift a region into someone else's portfolio of territory. But I think the way I've worked through it is, first of all, transparency. I think if you're just honest and kind of lay it all out on the table for my team, they've really appreciated that rather than kind of sugarcoating something or spinning it a certain way, at where I've seen people do that to me in the past.
mm,
My
mm,
transparency, I think, has created a lot of loyalty within my team because they can
mm,
trust. They can trust that they have me there if they're not liking the new tool we're using, and that they need to, they want to give some feedback and change the process that we're using. And then I think it was fascinating. I was listening to several of your other podcasts, and there was something that came up often out of like 70% of what I had listened to, which was the mission. Often people on your podcast talk about the mission of the company. And I think that's something I remind my team of. Like, what are we trying to achieve? Why did you
mm,
leave your other role to come here and do it differently? And so if we're going to do it differently and things are changing sometimes, like that's okay. How do we kind of move through that together? So yeah, that's kind of what I've focused on to kind of handhold a lot of people through it because it's hard. I mean, I get it.
mm, mm.
I think the
Yeah,
empathy is a big thing.
yeah. I mean, it's a bit, you have to bear with me on this one, but I
Okay.
think it's a, well, it's a bit like the remote versus office debate, right? We have a lot of this remote versus office debate, and you know, everyone has to sort of be like hard right or hard left on it, and I'm like, the answer is being empathetic to someone's personal situation. Like, as a business that's small and growing, I want my team in the office as much as possible because I think small teams in that environment, especially in an environment where we are serving the same clients, we can communicate faster, more effectively, and we can create a culture, which is really hard to do without it. But I also respect the fact that some of my team have children, some of my team work like are actually quite far out of like London, away from the office. So it's like, but it's kind of making it kind of personable on a level to say, right, where's the middle ground? Where's the kind of sensible kind of level? And understanding where their kind of like reactions to that come from. But you know, and I think that's just a live example of people kind of respect one, as you say, the transparency around that. Because, like for example, in my team, I'm like, I'm going to have a rule that everyone has to do, but I'll be empathetic around the edges of that.
Yeah.
But the transparency thing comes up a lot when we're doing hiring, and you know, I shared this with you before. But one part of our process when we're doing the search for a business is to put together a candidate pack. And I'm always like, the more transparent you can be in that, the better. So if your runway is only 18 months and you're a startup, tell
Mhm.
people it's only 18
There
months.
you go.
If you have particular challenges, tell them what those are because no one ever leaves if they've had the truth. They leave when they get surprised. People don't like surprises. It's like change they can handle, but like a surprise is oh, we actually kind of knew this at a management level, but we just didn't tell you. And
I
people do not forgive you for that.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I think you're spot on. I mean, I've had some of the best retention in the in the company. I'll pride myself on that because
nice.
of my level of transparency. Yeah.
Yeah.
And because of like that empathy that I agree with you. There needs to be some rules. There needs to be some, and not even rules. I just meant rules around like the working
Sure.
in office, right? Um,
Mm,
I agree. Like if you're going to get things done and strategize, sometimes it's so much better to be in person. Like you need
mm,
that time together. On the flip side, understanding and giving the empathy is so important as well. And like understanding people's home situations. And I mean, I don't even have children, but like it is nice to be home sometimes to get some stuff done. You
yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm smiling because I came home today because I was like, I've got calls till really late, and I said to my team, I was like, I want to be able to finish that call and be at home, so I'm going to go home now.
There you
Uh,
go.
but but the empathetic side of it, I went, I don't expect you to stay here if I'm going to go do that. So if you've got a chance to go home, go for it. So yeah, and that's that communication piece as well. How how do you do that at scale though? And I think that's I'm conscious of our times. There's probably there's two things I want to. So, yeah, how do you do that at scale? Because obviously it scales so quickly, Cowbell. It, it there's a lot of change in a short time. So is there a difference to doing it at scale and communicating effectively at scale that you've seen?
Yes. When we were small, we were in Zoom rooms all the time. And so I
Mhm.
think the team could feel like, they could hear from me enough. And so I think, and this is like, you can translate this to the claims team, you can translate this to engineering. As we got bigger, I believe the best way is kind of to create those next in lines and then kind of teach them, train them the same way. And it doesn't always work, right? Like I think, but I think if they feel, and I have this often with my direct reports, I get into a meeting and they're like, I just felt so good after our conversation. I feel really good. And so that's how they should feel leaving a one-on-one with you. And if they feel that way, then they're going to instill that in their own employees. So I think that's the biggest way. And then on top of that, we meet once a week as a larger team to just make sure we're checking in with each other. I think the Slack culture as well is can be good and bad. You know, I think if you overuse it and you're over communicating, it can be detrimental. But we tend not to like over communicate. We try to keep it short and sweet. And then just allowing, I think the other thing is like allowing people to take a pause and knowing they don't have to be like at their desk 24/7 answering every email. I think that's kind of like I've created that rule within the company or within the underwriting part of the organization. And I think knowing that and knowing that they can take a break has really allowed them to feel safe and kind of um, even as we get bigger, they kind of know they have a place to be, and as long as they get their work done and they kind of hit their goals, it's a good place to work. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that really resonates with me and our culture, and a little bit onto that Slack point, because we've got Slack at work and we use it, and quite a lot of the time we integrate with clients and use their Slack channels as well. You do get dangerously close to having this place where I couldn't reach you on email, so I've sent you a Slack, and so I sent you a WhatsApp, and it's like, no, I'm just busy. I'm doing something else right now, or and we have to be really careful because over communicating is really toxic, particularly when we have these kind of more fluid working situations where we do probably work longer hours, and we are trying to scale and grow, and all these things are challenging. Um, Caroline, I always like talking to you, and I could do this forever, but we have hit our sort of half hour mark. But the one thing I wanted to ask you is like, um, if you could give like young you some careers advice going into the underwriting side of the business,
Mhm.
what's one thing that you would tell yourself that you've learned along the way?
I think the main thing right now is the AI. I think AI is just going to be more part of the process. I think there's net pros and cons, and I think what the most important thing to do is to surround yourself with it, right? Understand what those pros and cons are, what the dangers are to AI, but then also start using it in your day-to-day life just so that you understand it because it's a part of our future, right? It will not replace underwriters. You know, I hear that a lot of our industry people say that as well. I think we're in agreement there. I don't think it's fully ever going to replace the underwriting process, but it's going to be a part of our lives. And so the deeper we understand it, the better we'll be able to use it. So I think that's an important thing going forward.
Isn't that good advice? I think that's good advice for most industries, to be honest, these days. I mean,
There you go.
I keep getting told I'm going to be replaced by AI, and I've used some
No
really
way.
smart AI tools, and I'm
We're
like,
we're in a relationship business. So are you. Like it's the same. I mean,
that's what I said.
relationships, right? It
I
is
was
not,
like,
we're not going
yeah, like
on.
no one's no one's taking careers advice from AI just yet. Or making career decisions based on that, because it is still a kind of relationship business, and it's really important to remember that. Caroline, it's been a pleasure. I'm really glad we got a chance to do this. So thank you very much for being a guest on the podcast.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.